The sun had yet to rise when Alex opened his eyes that Tuesday morning. As usual, his first thought was a flood of worries. The familiar weight of anxiety was already settling in his chest, a sensation that had faithfully accompanied him for years, like an unwelcome shadow. As he stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, his thoughts spun in an endless cycle of what-ifs and buts, a dance he knew all too well. What Alex didn't yet know was that this morning would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would transform not only his mind but his entire reality. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research had long pointed to something revolutionary. Our thoughts are not merely passive reflections of our reality. They are the active architects of our biological and existential experience. That morning, as Alex prepared his automatic breakfast, 2 slices of toast and a black coffee without sugar, he stumbled upon an article that would change his life. The text discussed how the human brain processes approximately 60,000 thoughts each day, and surprisingly, how 95% of those thoughts are exactly the same as the day before. This revelation struck him like a bolt of lightning. He was trapped in a mental loop, reliving the same fears and anxieties day after day. The article went on to explain how neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections, allows us to literally reprogram our minds through conscious internal dialogue. It was as if each thought acted as a tiny architect, constructing new neural pathways in our brains moment by moment. The most impactful discovery came when Alex read about the 3 critical moments of the day. Waking up, when the brain transitions between theta and alpha states, making it more receptive to new programming. Mid-afternoon, when we naturally experience a shift in our circadian rhythm. And the moments before sleep, when we once again enter the theta state, ideal for consolidating new mental impressions. As he read, Alex felt something unusual stir within him. It wasn't hope. He had felt hope before, only to watch it fade like morning mist under the rising sun. This was something deeper, more fundamental. It was as if every cell in his body was awakening to a long-forgotten truth, the possibility of real change, grounded not in empty wishes but in solid science. Dr. Bruce Lipton, in his groundbreaking work on epigenetics, had shown how our thoughts and beliefs could literally switch genes on and off, influencing our biological expression at the cellular level. This wasn't just another self-help theory. It was cutting-edge science, revealing how every word we speak to ourselves has the power to rewrite not only our mental narrative, but our very biology. At that moment, seated at his breakfast table with a now-cold cup of coffee forgotten between his hands, Alex made a decision. It would no longer be a vague promise to think more positively or try to do better. This was a commitment rooted in scientific understanding. He would dedicate the next 3 days to consciously experimenting with the power of his words. The sun finally began to rise, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. Alex watched as the light gradually transformed the urban landscape outside his window. It was the perfect metaphor for what was about to unfold in his own mind. A gradual yet unstoppable transformation, guided by the light of awareness and the power of intentionally chosen words. Picking up his phone, he set 3 daily reminders: morning upon waking, afternoon 3 p.m., and evening before bed. Every moment would present an opportunity to engage in a simple yet powerful ritual of neural transformation through conscious internal dialogue. The challenge had been set, and with it, the beginning of a journey that would prove to be far deeper and more transformative than Alex could have ever imagined. Alex's first conscious awakening was akin to attempting to move a muscle long dormant. When the alarm rang at 6 a.m., his initial instinct was the same as always: to dive into thoughts about all the worries awaiting him. But this time, something was different. There was a small inner voice, almost a whisper, reminding him of his commitment. Following the instructions he had studied the night before, Alex kept his eyes closed after waking, allowing himself to remain in the theta state, that mental state between sleep and wakefulness, which neuroscientists have identified as particularly receptive to new mental programming. It was as if his brain were a freshly watered garden, ready to receive new seeds. With a renewed and resolute awareness, he began his first conscious inner dialogue of the day. I choose to create an extraordinary day. Every cell in my body resonates with health and vitality. My mind is clear and focused. At first, the words felt strange, almost artificial, like a new and unfamiliar language. Dr. Candace Pert, in her groundbreaking research on the molecules of emotion, had demonstrated how every word we speak, whether aloud or in our inner dialogue, triggers a cascade of specific neuropeptides in the body. These messenger molecules literally transform our biochemistry, moment by moment. Alex wasn't merely repeating words, he was igniting a molecular revolution within his own body. Throughout that first morning, Alex noticed how challenging it was to maintain the new pattern of thought. It was as if his brain were a deep river, its waters accustomed to flowing in one direction for years. Altering that current demanded constant vigilance and a conscious effort he wasn't used to exerting. By the time the afternoon ritual arrived at 3 p.m., Alex was exhausted, not physically but mentally. Maintaining awareness of one's thoughts proved to be an unexpectedly arduous task. Finding a quiet corner in his office, he closed his eyes, there for a few minutes, and reconnected with his empowering affirmations. I am capable, I am strong. Every challenge makes me more resilient. Dr. Richard Davidson, in his studies on neuroplasticity, had demonstrated how even small mindfulness practices could create measurable changes in brain structure within days. Alex was essentially conducting a mindfulness experiment centered on words. Each moment of conscious attention was like a small brick in the construction of a new neural foundation. As night fell and Alex prepared for sleep, he reflected on his first day of practice. It had been more challenging than he had anticipated, yet also more enlightening. He realized just how often throughout the day his automatic inner dialogue had been negative, critical, or self-limiting. It was as if, for the first time, he was seeing a program that had been running in the background of his mind for years. Lying in bed, he performed his nightly ritual with a newfound appreciation for its meaning. I am grateful for all the experiences of this day. My subconscious works through the night to integrate all the new lessons. Tomorrow will be even better. The words seemed to carry more weight now, as if they were imbued with the energy of his conscious intent. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg had documented how contemplative practices before sleep could significantly influence the quality of rest and the consolidation of memory. Alex was essentially crafting a new contemplative ritual, programming his brain to process and integrate his new choices during sleep. As he drifted into slumber, Alex felt a subtle yet distinct sense of change. It was as though something deep within him was reorganizing itself, responding to the new pattern of thought he had consciously maintained throughout the day. The first day of his 3-day journey was complete, and though the changes were subtle, the seeds of transformation had already been sown. The second day dawned with a different quality. Alex awoke naturally a few minutes before his alarm, with an unusual sensation coursing through his body. It wasn't the familiar tension of anxiety, but something more subtle, a kind of electric restlessness, as if every cell were vibrating at a slightly different frequency. Dr. David Hawkins, in his studies on the energy fields of consciousness, had documented how shifts in thought patterns could create measurable changes in the body's energetic field. Alex was experiencing this firsthand, though he couldn't yet put a name to the phenomenon. Following his new morning ritual, he kept his eyes closed and began his conscious inner dialogue. But today, something felt different. An inner voice, louder and more insistent than the day before, began to challenge the entire process. This is absurd. Do you really believe words can change anything? Look at your life. It's always been this way and it always will be. Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz, an expert in neuroplasticity and OCD, had described this phenomenon as deceptive brain messages, misleading signals from the brain. These are natural resistances that emerge when we attempt to forge new neural pathways. The brain, wired to conserve energy, instinctively resists change even when it's for the better. Rather than fighting against these voices or attempting to silence them, Alex recalled what he had read about mindful observation. He began to observe these resistant thoughts with curiosity, as if they were clouds drifting across the sky of his consciousness. Fascinating how my mind clings to old patterns, he thought, introducing an element of awareness into the process. At work, the challenges intensified. A series of technical issues arose, and Alex felt the familiar sensation of overwhelm beginning to build. But this time, something different happened. Amid the chaos, he remembered his empowering mantra: "I remain calm and centered, regardless of external circumstances." Every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, AEC, pioneer in the study of positive emotions, had demonstrated how conscious positive thoughts can literally expand our thought-action repertoire, our ability to find creative solutions to problems. Alex was putting this theory into practice, even without realizing it. When the time for the afternoon ritual arrived, Alex was more prepared than the day before. He found a quiet spot in the park near the office and, for the first time, combined his words with mindful movement. As he walked slowly, he repeated internally, "Each step brings me closer to my true essence. My body is wise and knows exactly what it needs." Dr. Paul Bach-y-Rita, a pioneer in neuroplasticity, had demonstrated how physical movement combined with conscious intention can accelerate the formation of new neural connections. Alex's simple walk was transforming into a powerful practice of mind-body integration. That evening, a surprise awaited Alex. During dinner with friends, he noticed that he was more present, more connected. Words flowed more easily, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the compulsive need to check his phone every 5 minutes. It was as though the space between his thoughts had expanded, allowing for a different quality of presence. The nightly ritual brought forth a new dimension of gratitude. "I am thankful for the wisdom found in the resistances I encountered today. Each challenge revealed something significant about myself. As I sleep, my body and mind integrate at even deeper levels." As sleep drew near, Alex realized that something fundamental was shifting. It wasn't just his thoughts, it was his relationship with them. A new quality of awareness was emerging, like a silent observer capable of witnessing both positive and negative thoughts without fully identifying with either. The third day began with a series of events that, at any other time, Alex would have dismissed as mere coincidences. Shortly after his morning ritual, he received a message from an old colleague about a job opportunity that seemed tailor-made for his skills. On his way to the office, he happened to find a forgotten book on a subway bench. It was precisely about neuroscience and personal transformation. Dr. Carl Jung had coined the term synchronicity to describe these significantly coincidental events that seem to defy normal causal explanation. However, modern quantum physics was beginning to provide a scientific framework for understanding these seemingly mysterious phenomena. Dr. Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist, had proposed that our consciousness is not confined to the brain, but exists within a non-local quantum field that permeates all of reality. When we shift our patterns of thought and emotion, we are not merely altering our individual biochemistry. We are engaging with this vast field of possibilities. During his morning practice, Alex noticed a qualitative shift in his power words. They were no longer mere affirmations. They had become declarations infused with a tangible emotional energy. "I am an open channel for the infinite possibilities of the universe. Every moment brings precisely what I need for my growth and evolution." At work, Alex began to observe how his altered internal state was subtly influencing those around him. Colleagues who were typically tense and defensive seemed more open and collaborative in his presence. A meeting that could have been contentious turned into a productive brainstorming session. The Dr. HeartMath Institute had documented how our heart's electromagnetic field can directly influence those around us within a radius of several meters. The changes Alex was experiencing weren't merely subjective. They were measurable shifts in his energy field that were literally transforming the environment around him. Later in the day, during his ritual, Alex experienced something extraordinary. As he repeated his power words in a state of deep presence, he felt a visceral connection to something greater than himself. It was as though each word reverberated, not only within his body, but across an infinite field of possibilities. The physicist David Bohm had described reality as possessing an implicate order underlying our everyday, explicit reality. Through his practice, Alex was beginning to attune himself to this deeper dimension of reality, where thought and matter are not separate, but different aspects of the same unified field. At night, reflecting on his 3 days of practice, Alex realized he had uncovered something far more profound than a mere mental reprogramming technique. He had found a gateway to a new way of being, one that transcended the artificial division between mind and matter, between the individual and the universal. A week had passed since the start of the 3-day experiment, and Alex was beginning to understand that what had begun as a simple exercise in internal dialogue had transformed into a profound journey of self-discovery. The changes he observed in his life were no longer subtle. They were deep and undeniable. Dr. Candace Pert, in her groundbreaking research, had demonstrated that emotions are not merely abstract mental states, but real biochemical substances that flow throughout our bodies. Every thought, every word we utter internally, triggers a cascade of specific neuropeptides that literally alter our physiology. Alex began to notice how different words produced distinct physical sensations within his body. When he used empowering, words filled with gratitude and love, he felt an expansion in his chest, a pleasant warmth that spread throughout his entire being. In contrast, when he momentarily slipped back into old patterns of negative thinking, he could sense an immediate physical contraction, as though every cell in his body responded instantaneously to the quality of his thoughts. Dr. Masaru Emoto, through his controversial yet fascinating studies on the influence of words on the molecular structure of water, had suggested that words possess a literal power to alter physical matter. Given that the human body is primarily composed of water, Alex began to contemplate the profound impact his internal dialogue was having at a cellular level. During his daily practices, Alex developed an increasing sensitivity to what he referred to as emotional geography, an internal map of sensations and emotions within his body. He noticed how certain words and thoughts created specific patterns of tension or relaxation, like waves moving through an inner ocean of awareness. Dr. Peter Levine, a pioneer in the study of trauma and somatic healing, had emphasized how the body retains a cellular memory of all our experiences. Alex was essentially engaging in a process of somatic reprogramming through his mindful practices of internal dialogue. As his practice deepened, Alex began to experience moments of extraordinary clarity that seemed to transcend ordinary understanding. It was as if he were tuning into a greater field of intelligence, where the boundaries between the individual self and the universal began to dissolve. Quantum physicist Amit Goswami had proposed that consciousness is not a product of the brain, but rather the fundamental field of reality from which all matter emerges. This perspective was beginning to resonate deeply with Alex, not just intellectually, but as a direct experiential truth. During his practices, especially in the transitional moments between wakefulness and sleep, Alex began to catch glimpses of an expanded state of consciousness where he could feel himself as part of a unified field of energy and information. His words of power were no longer mere personal affirmations, but had become points of connection with this greater field of possibilities. Dr. Ervin Laszlo, in his theory of the Akashic field, had described how all information and experiences are recorded in a universal field of consciousness. Alex began to realize that his thoughts and words were not isolated events, but ripples within a greater field that influenced the very fabric of reality. In his work, Alex noticed how his transformed presence began to catalyze systemic changes. Projects that once seemed stagnant started to flow with surprising ease. Challenging relationships naturally shifted, as if his new state of being created a field of harmony around him. The HeartMath Institute had documented how the heart's electromagnetic field can be measured several meters away from the body, and how this field can directly influence others. Alex was experiencing this reality firsthand, observing how his inner transformation created waves of change in his external environment. As his journey continued, Alex encountered one of the most challenging aspects of transformation. the apparent chaos that precedes a new order. There were days when it seemed as though his entire world was being reshuffled, as if the universe itself were rearranging the cards of his life to lay out a new hand. The chaos theory in modern physics had revealed how complex systems often need to pass through periods of apparent disorder to emerge into higher levels of organization. Dr. Ilya Prigogine referred to these moments as dissipative structures, turning points where chaos gives birth to a new order. Alex began to view his own moments of confusion and uncertainty through this new lens. Rather than resisting them, he learned to trust the process of reorganization unfolding at deeper levels of his being. His words of power shifted to reflect this newfound understanding. I trust in the process of life. Every moment of chaos carries within it the seeds of a new order. Dr. Bruce Lipton had demonstrated how cells sometimes need to go through periods of disorganization before reorganizing themselves into a higher level of functioning. Alex was experiencing this principle on a macro scale in his own life. As he reached the end of this initial phase of his journey, Alex came to understand that there was no true end, only ever deeper levels of awakening and transformation. What had begun as a 3-day experiment had evolved into a lifelong practice, a new way of being in the world. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg had documented how consistent spiritual practices can literally reshape the brain, creating new neural patterns that support elevated states of consciousness. Alex had essentially crafted his own spiritual practice, rooted equally in science and direct experience. His words of power had evolved to reflect this newfound understanding. I am a being in constant evolution, eternally awakening to deeper levels of consciousness and possibility. Every moment is a fresh beginning, every breath a new opportunity. The impact on his life was undeniable. The anxiety that once consumed him had transformed into a sense of positive anticipation for the unknown. His relationships had deepened, his work had gained greater meaning, and his physical health had improved remarkably. Yet, perhaps the most profound change was in his understanding of reality itself. Through his practice, Alex had discovered that the universe is not a lifeless, mechanical place, but a living field of consciousness in constant evolution, responding, moment by moment, to the quality of our thoughts and words. Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, a quantum physicist, had suggested that consciousness does not merely observe reality, but actively participates in its creation. Alex had become a conscious participant in this creative dance, wielding the power of his words to shape not only his internal states, but the very field of possibilities in which he existed. His journey continues, an eternal awakening to new possibilities, one word at a time. And through his transformation, he has become a beacon of hope for others, living proof that profound change is possible when we combine the power of words with the wisdom of the heart and the precision of science. The end of this narrative is merely the beginning of countless other transformative journeys awaiting those who dare to explore the creative power of their words, an invitation for each reader to uncover their own ability to rewrite their reality, one thought at a time.